And Yoruba kings in Benin Republic have met in Ajahun to discuss the arrest and prosecution of Yoruba nation activist Sunday Igboho. Kings and chiefs of Yoruba origin who believe they are brothers with Sunday Adeyemo, who was recently arrested in Cotonou, are seeking ways to help the activist who is wanted in Nigeria. The Court of Appeal sitting in Cotonou will continue hearing the case by the federal government of Nigeria against Igboho, who has been held in Benin for nearly 7 days.
And the Olubado of Ibadan land, Salihu Adetunji, says he has sent a delegation to Cotonou, Benin Republic, to observe court proceedings in the trial of Sunday Adeyemo, who's also known as Sunday Igboho. The monarch in a statement says those selected to be a part of the delegation will be at the court in Cotonou, where Igboho's case will resume on Monday. But he says he is in contact with Yoruba prominent royal fathers, including Igboho royal crowns, to allay public fears of a repeat performance of the Yoruba Fulani coalition of 1814.
Okay, well, for analysis, let's turn to a RISE News analyst, Dr. Sam AMADI. Very warm welcome. Well, it's going to be another tough Monday in Nigeria already, like you heard in the news. Agents of the Directorate of State Services have cordoned off the whole of the federal, all precincts, roads leading to the Federal High Court in Maitama. This may not be unconnected with the threats by members of the proscribed people, proscribed Ipob members and the rest. But should they be issuing such threats? Why wouldn't they allow the law to take its course?
Well, I think first you would, what we call threats are proclamations by individuals. I mean, you hear somebody says, I remember when we were student activists, say, we'll make the campus ungovernable. We didn't have arms. These are rhetorics. So a government is serious business, and you will expect that there will be those kind of statements. But the critical things here, first is that this is a trial that must proceed. The government of Nigeria should have the rigor and the energy to withstand the trial. This is going to be a politicized trial by its nature. I remember when we had the
Kanu'S.
Yes, I mean, you see Ogonis coming out from federal secretariats singing. Of course, you disperse this, they'll come again. So this is not going to be a one race. It's going to be a marathon. So I think the notion in a democratic trial that people are going to come out and protest, if they're peaceful, if they're going to be orderly, that's part of democratic right. And again, you don't want to compromise the integrity of the trial. So much, for example, if there are massive clampdown, arrests, and so on and so forth, that constitutes a different issue around the trial. Attention. So we are going to expect a tough trial, and I think the DSS should know enough to know how to manage the situation. Again, you wouldn't expect that there will be no physical, protests. There have been protests in New York, in London, and the US.
In France, in Paris.
So sympathizers, supporters, and even members of the proscribed group will probably do have some protests. Again, we don't want to escalate to a point where we have maybe the non-government and some kind of terrorist activity. We want to make sure that everything is in the open. And that's why the challenge in this trial is the judge and the prosecutors. Because if the judge should, for example, issue some kind of directives, lawyers should be allowed to approach the court. But this is going to be cases, not just the laws of Nnamdi Kanu. Ohanaeze has raised a team led by former governor of Anambra State, to lead the Igbo delegation to the trial.
To observe proceedings.
You want to have open trial. You have reasonable access to the court based on capacity and orderliness.
It doesn't look as if we're going to be saying that because of what you call it now, the takeover by the Department of State Services officials and agents and the rest. I'm even afraid for the media if they would allow the media in.
Well, there are all sorts of stories flying around concerning who is going to get access. But until tomorrow, we cannot really predict. But one thing we can also look at right now is the fact that one of the counsels to Nnamdi Kanu, speaking about Aloy Ejimako, is actually saying that Nigerians should expect some sort of difference in the trial tomorrow. He's actually saying that, you know what, they might be going for a plea deal to get the government to come to the negotiating table.
A plea bargain.
A plea bargain. do you think this is the best way for them to be handling the situation, especially looking at the charges laid against this man?
Yeah.
I think it's actually the best for government. I mean, what do you want to gain in a political trial? First, you find him guilty, worst case scenario, okay? He's convicted, put in prison. Now, when freedom fighters, quote unquote, or revolutionaries or terrorists, whatever you call them, are in prison, it's actually more dangerous because they are canonized.
They become political
heroes.
Prisoners.
Exactly.
Or
and
prisoners of conscience.
And that
ignites to their supporters.
Exactly. So the best thing for a state is, look, this is politics, basically. I mean, this is about some degree of insurrection or some degree of aggression that the government doesn't like. Like Sunday Oboho's case, look at the movement now. This is a country where at the same time you're having 2 trials of persons who are challenging the state. It doesn't speak well about the state's stability and integrity. So if government find a way to head up the crisis, have a plea bargain. By the way, you see, you look all over the world, people do plea bargain because plea bargain is a process of looking at the bigger goal. Do we gain more from the crisis, or do we gain less from the crisis? So I think in this case, it pays more to have clear case of plea bargain that will help you to achieve the strategic goal of having post-trial a peace that's much more substantive than the peace of trial. So that, I think, is the most important. So for me, if I'm recommending for government, as long as government gets value, for example, assuming it's okay, we stop all agitations, we stop militant action, and government thinks it's reasonable, you can do a plea bargain and maybe have some kind of summary conviction, or even without conviction, you have a sense in which government, the authority has the right to institute discontinued procedures. So if he thinks that the political play out is better for him than going through a trial. Political trials are dangerous. One, the evidential part is difficult to arrange because the courts are not going to follow on sentiment or newspaper publication. You're going to tie the person to particular actions that are criminal and show that there's a nexus, clear and sufficient, between that person and those actions. And because free speech, it's difficult to tie people on speech because people can make speech. For example, if somebody says, look at what's going on in Capitol, US now. He says, go there and show them. And somebody goes there and kills somebody. Now, it doesn't follow that the man who procures somebody to probably go and demonstrate is actually criminally liable for the death that happens. So it's not just easy to say, okay, fine, open and close. The state has the capacity to detain you, to torture you, to do all kinds of things, but they don't have the capacity to get a conviction. So this might spiral into 2 years, 3 years. At the end of the day, you create more support for the struggle that you want to de-emphasize. So it might be strategic to go for a political settlement. And this is probably what is more feasible. Political settlements,
yes, at this time. And if it's going to calm frayed nerves. Because the nerves that, are on the edge right now are saying, why the haste with government and his instruments of coercion so quick to get Nnamdi Kanu going after Sunday Igboho, and they couldn't get the bandits or even the terrorists. The terrorist leader, Shakal, was only killed by rival terrorists or factions.
And the rivals are setting up camp, setting up government. That will continue to be a shadow over what government is doing. Because as long as everybody says, look, you've got these guys, you are determined to prosecute them, but we don't have any high-profile bandit or killer, headsmen, wherever they are, whether Nigerians or Nigerians, who have gone on trial. So the notion here is that you're not just doing justice, but they said justice has to be seen to be done. So government is at the difficult situation now to justify whether this is basically a criminal trial per se, or this is a political trial of a movement it doesn't like. Now look at the way we describe Sunday Adeyemo as the Yoruba Nation activist. Now, if you look at the Olu-Ibadan, high-profile chief, okay, acting, showing some commitment. You see the way committee has been set. Only set a committee of 22 strong leaders about this matter. So this is not just some criminal matter that a DEX officer in the Ministry of Justice will just file affidavit. This is state security. This is national interest. And I think at this point, therefore, the thinking should be broader consideration. The president, the vice president, all the major players will be sitting down and saying, what's the best way to handle this crisis? Because Ken Sarowa was finally convicted, executed. Then what came out of it was a much more virulent agitation in the Niger Delta. His was arguably less violent, if it was violent. Apart from the incident of the killing of the Gori leaders, there was very minimal violence. But afterwards, we now saw ourselves in the grip of kidnappers and militants who dominated and took over the waterways of this country.
Which was still battling
exactly. So
years after his
we don't know what to come out of this virus if we don't manage. So I think there's need for fair trial, openness, it helps, and land the line, some kind of political settlement would be the best solution.
Just like
we now talk about the case as it is, so to avoid subjudice. But at the end of the day, the fact that we're seeing a lot of military presence ahead of this trial, and there's a lot of clamor and talks going all around, not just here in Nigeria right now. Let's talk about the implication if we see a militarized trial for Nnamdi Kanu.
First, don't forget that he's still a British citizen. Okay, we don't know the secret diplomatic moves going on. The last we heard is that there have been some form for consular support. Now, what will happen is that if the trial is fair, very fair, evidently fair, and peaceful, it could reassure British government and those who are interested to allow the trial go on. Now, but if the trial becomes persecutorial in terms of street action, people come, maybe some lawyers get brutalized, somebody gets, the camera people, journalists are not allowed to come, and journalists are arrested, then you create a subtext, which is a subtext of oppression, of a government that's not reliable. And then don't forget, it will cast a shadow on Sunday Igboho's extradition hearing, because the key element of extradition is that the person will face fair trial. Now, so Monday is a litmus test. If what you show is some kind of gunboat, some kind of militarized trial, where even lawyers find difficult to go get in, even other senior bar members who want to observe proceedings can't go in, and even family members cannot go in, then the signal you're sending to Benin Republic is that basically this is political trial, what we call a hangman's court. And basically, why should we ask somebody to go to trial in your country if you can't assure us basic elements of fair trial? So Monday is a test case for Nigeria because they could feed into what the Court of Appeal in Benin Republic does regarding Sunday's case.
Thank you so very much. Associate Professor Dr. Sam AMADI is a lawyer too and a Rise News analyst for dissecting the issues. Yeah. We'll continue to interrogate it with the Monday trial once it begins. Yes.